Hello everyone. Welcome to an inspiring story of resilience and rebirth. Today we'll embark on the journey of Alla Vasili, a 51-year-old woman in Charleston, South Carolina, facing a heartbreaking betrayal from her husband of 25 years. But when everything seemed to collapse during a Thanksgiving dinner, an unexpected inheritance opened the door for Alla to reshape her life. From a dedicated accountant, she transformed into a powerful entrepreneur, confronting financial secrets and building her own empire. In the warm golden glow of a historic home in Charleston's Old Village, South Carolina, Alla Vasili, 51, chief accountant at Carolina Capital Partners, sat at a Thanksgiving table laden with turkey, pumpkin pie and wine. The air buzzed with the laughter of her children, Max and Aaron, alongside her sister Natalie and brother-in-law Andrew. Porcelain plates clinked, the scent of spices wafted, but Alla's smile froze when Victor Mason, her husband of 25 years, stood up, raising his wine glass with a smug expression. "I'm leaving," Victor declared, his voice booming like thunder in the silent room. "I'm in love with Veronica Steele, my marketing assistant. She's 26, completely different from Alla." Max dropped his fork, mashed potatoes splattering on the table. Erin bowed her head, eyes brimming with tears, while Natalie gaped, her hand clutching a napkin. Andrew suddenly focused on cleaning his glasses, as if it were the most pressing task. Alla, heart-pounding, sat upright, her icy gaze locked on Victor. "Congratulations on your new love," she said, her voice eerily calm, though a storm raged within. Victor smirked, raising his glass higher, as if expecting the family to toast. No one moved. Aaron burst into tears and fled the room. Max glared at his father with a mix of contempt and disappointment. "Maybe you should go," Alla said, her voice steady. "This is still my house," Victor replied, confident to the point of arrogance, then retreated to his study, wine bottle in hand. As the guests left awkwardly, Alla cleared the table, her mind reeling. 25 years of building a family, a career, and this home, shattered in a moment. But when she pressed the answering machine, the voice of attorney Robert Mitchell rang out. "Alla, I have important news about your Uncle Pavel's estate. Call me back soon." Those words, like a spark, signaled a turning point that would change everything. Alla stood in the kitchen, the dim light from the Thanksgiving chandelier casting shadows on the invisible shards of her 25-year marriage. The clatter of cleared dishes had faded, but her mind churned, flipping through memories like an old accounting ledger. She thought of Victor, of their early days at the University of South Carolina, when she was an ambitious accounting student and he was the lively boy with an infectious smile and big dreams. Victor, with his curly hair and passionate voice, had made Alla's heart race when he spoke of building an insurance empire. She, with her cautious nature, was drawn to his boldness, as if they were two complementary pieces. She the steady foundation, he the blazing fire. They married at 30, when Alla had a stable job at a local accounting firm, and Victor launched his startup with a small loan for his insurance company. The early years were a blur of long days filled with sweat and hope. Alla worked days, balancing clients' books, then came home to help Victor renovate the historic Charleston home they'd bought, a colonial with creaky wood floors and windows needing replacement. She recalled late nights painting walls, laughing amid the smell of paint and sawdust, believing they were building not just a house but a future. When Max and Aaron were born, Alla took only 6 weeks off after each birth, then returned to work, juggling motherhood and family finances. She became the keeper of the hearth, ensuring bills were paid, while Victor poured his energy into expanding his company. His insurance firm grew from a small office in Charleston's business district to an insurtech startup with a sleek downtown office. Victor changed over time, from cheap suits to tailored ones, from an old sedan to a shiny convertible Mustang. Alla supported him, believing the extravagance was a reward for their years of struggle, an investment in the image of a successful entrepreneur. But cracks had appeared, though Alla chose not to see them. Victor began criticizing her simple wardrobe, calling her office dresses too boring. He spent more time at the office, citing client meetings, but the faint scent of unfamiliar perfume on his shirts late at night unsettled her. Last year, when Victor, at 49, suddenly took up gym sessions and boasted about his new healthy lifestyle, Alla smiled, telling herself it was a phase. Natalie, her sister, had joked about a midlife crisis when Victor bought the Mustang without consulting Alla. Men, they all want to reinvent themselves sometimes, Natalie said, and Alla nodded, choosing trust over doubt. Uncle Pavel, her mother's brother, was the only one who seemed to see something deeper. A Russian immigrant and real estate investor. He lived simply but owned an impressive portfolio in Charleston and Savannah. During their monthly lunches at a cafe by the Ashley River, he called Alla the ant among grasshoppers, praising her pragmatism and foresight. "You always know how to prepare for tomorrow," he said, his eyes twinkling as if he knew something she didn't. When he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer 6 months ago, Alla visited often, bringing homemade meals he rarely touched, but he always kept her longer, sharing lessons from his life. "Financial independence is freedom, Alla," he stressed. "Never let anyone take that from you." Now, standing in the quiet kitchen, Pavel's words echoed like a warning. She thought of Veronica Steele, the marketing assistant Victor hired 3 months ago. He'd described her as dynamic, creative, full of potential, but Alla had only met her once at a company party. The young woman with glossy blonde hair, expensive heels, and a confident smile had made Alla feel an invisible distance. Last week, when Alla surprised Victor with lunch at his office, she caught the receptionist's uneasy glance and heard giggles behind his locked office door. She left the sandwich and walked away, convincing herself there was a reasonable explanation. But now, after Victor's announcement, it was clear. She had chosen trust over truth. Morning light filtered softly through the kitchen window, casting a pale gold glow on the oak table. Alla stood there, holding a cold coffee mug, her gaze distant, trying to piece together the wreckage of her life that Victor had toppled last night. The phone's ring broke her thoughts, the screen flashing Robert Mitchell, Uncle Pavel's attorney. She took a deep breath, set the mug down, and answered, sensing this call would change everything. "Alla, I need to see you today." Robert's warm voice carried a hint of urgency. "Pavel's will has some important details. Can you come to my office in downtown Charleston at 10? Alla agreed, her voice soft but firm, though her heart raced. She slipped on a simple wool coat, grabbed her purse, and stepped out of the historic home that had been her and Victor's haven. Charleston streets unfolded with shaded oaks and antebellum homes with wrought iron balconies, but today everything felt different, as if the city itself awaited her next chapter. Robert Mitchell's office sat on King Street, a red brick building with gleaming glass doors. Robert, a man in his 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes, greeted Alla with a warm handshake. "Pavel thought the world of you," he began, gesturing to a leather chair in the meeting room. Before them was a thick stack of documents, beside a silver Russian teapot, a gift from Pavel, he explained. "He left you nearly his entire estate." Alla felt blood rush to her ears. "Nearly his entire?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. Robert slid the documents across the table, detailing 6 commercial properties in Charleston and Savannah, a diversified stock portfolio, and control of Pavel's education scholarship fund, totaling about $500,000. Crucially, everything was structured as separate property, not joint with Victor, thanks to Pavel's care in drafting the will after Alla's marriage. "Pavel wanted you to have freedom," Robert said, his eyes softening. "He believed you'd know how to use it." She flipped through the pages, fingers tracing numbers and property addresses. A downtown Charleston office building, a small Savannah shopping center, and investments in stable index funds. The will included a handwritten letter from Pavel, his shaky but clear script reading, "Alla, your resilience is your strength. Whatever life throws at you, this is your safety net. Use it to soar." She reread it, feeling warmth and a pang of pain. Uncle Pavel, who lived simply in a modest apartment, had quietly built a small empire and now entrusted it to her. But the joy of the inheritance was quickly overshadowed by new doubts. Back home, Alla opened her laptop, checking the joint accounts she and Victor shared, a habit to keep things orderly. She noticed a series of irregular transactions, thousands withdrawn over the past 6 months, with no invoices or clear explanations. A $5,000 withdrawal coincided with Victor's big client trip to Hilton Head. Another $3,000 vanished after he showed off a new watch. Alla's stomach knotted. Victor hadn't just betrayed her emotionally. He might be doing something far worse. She called Natalie, her voice trembling as she shared the will and her financial discoveries. "I'm not surprised," Natalie said over the phone, her tone laced with indignation. "Victor always cared more about appearances than sense. But you're rich now, Alla. What can you do with this money?" Alla paused, her mind racing. Pavel's estate wasn't just money. It was power, a chance to stand firm against the storm Victor had unleashed. But first, she needed the truth about Victor's finances, his secrets, and how far he'd gone to sabotage their shared life. The sunset painted Charleston's cobblestone streets red as Alla entered a small Italian restaurant on Meeting Street. The scent of toasted bread and tomato sauce lingered, but she paid it no mind. She had agreed to meet Victor to discuss finances. His invitation, sent via curt, confident text, as if he still held control. Alla, in a simple but sharp navy blazer, sat at a secluded corner table, hands clasped, waiting. She was no longer the silent wife cleaning up the wreckage of Thanksgiving. She was a woman with Pavel's legacy in her hands and a keen suspicion about Victor's secrets. Victor walked in, his gray suit slightly wrinkled, his forced smile failing to mask his tension. "You look okay," he started, sitting opposite her, his eyes probing for signs of collapse. Alla nodded lightly, ignoring the hollow compliment. She was prepared, thanks to a forensic accountant Robert Mitchell had recommended. Karen Hayes, a sharp woman with a knack for dissecting numbers like a surgeon. In 3 days, Karen had unraveled the joint accounts, uncovering a web of fraud that made Alla shudder. "What do we need to discuss, Victor?" she asked, her voice low, no nonsense. Victor cleared his throat, fingers tapping the table. "The house. It's valuable, Alla. I think you should stay there, but I need a buyout to start over." He emphasized the last words, as if it were his right. Alla raised an eyebrow, anger simmering but restrained by what she knew. Karen had discovered Victor forged her signature to take a $200,000 business loan against the house, a loan now in default. He'd also opened 3 credit cards in her name, racking up $30,000 in debt for lavish trips, gifts, and expensive dinners with Veronica Steele. "A buyout," Alla repeated dryly, pulling a thin stack of documents from her purse and sliding them across the table. "Before we talk about the house, explain these." Victor glanced down, his face paling as he saw copies of bank transactions, loan agreements, and credit card statements. "Withdrawals from our joint account, $47,000 in 6 months. Credit cards I never signed up for. And the house loan, my signature but not by my hand." She paused, locking eyes with him. "Fraud, Victor. That's the word for it." Victor leaned back, gripping the table's edge. "You've got it wrong," he stammered. "Those were business expenses. The company hit a rough patch. I just borrowed." Alla cut him off, her voice sharp as a blade. "Borrowed? Or to pay for Veronica's plane tickets. 4 5-star hotels in Miami." She pulled out her phone, opening an email from Karen with a timeline matching each transaction to Victor's business trips. Each number was a cut into the perfect image he tried to maintain. Just then Veronica walked in, her blonde hair gleaming under the restaurant's lights, her tight red dress making her stand out like a flame. "Victor, are you done yet?" she asked, her voice sweet but impatient, then glanced at Alla with a mix of curiosity and disdain. Alla smiled faintly, sliding the documents toward Veronica. "You should see this. If you're going with Victor, you'd better know how deep in debt he is." Veronica frowned, flipping through a few pages, her eyes widening at the debt statements and loan contracts. "Victor, what is this?" she demanded, her voice rising. Victor tried to explain, his voice shaky. "Just a misunderstanding, babe. I'll handle it. But Veronica stood, her purse swinging on her shoulder. You said you were stable. You said this was just about her. She pointed at Alla, then spun on her heel and left, leaving Victor red-faced with humiliation. Alla sipped her water, her eyes never leaving Victor. She didn't know about the loan, did she? Or that your company's been losing money for 3 years? She knew this from Karen's report. Victor's Insurtech had failed to compete with tech giants, and he'd hidden it by draining their joint accounts. Victor slammed his hand on the table, his voice dropping to a near whisper. What do you want, Alla? To ruin me? She leaned forward, her voice even and cold. I want the truth. And I want what's mine. The house, my assets, and my dignity. She stood, leaving the documents on the table. My lawyer will be in touch. Don't contact me directly again. Victor stared after her, mouth agape but speechless, as if realizing for the first time that the woman before him was no longer the Alla he knew. As Alla stepped out of the restaurant, Charleston's cool air embraced her. She felt the weight of Pavel's legacy, not just money but the chance to reshape her life. But first she had to protect what was hers. She texted Susan Carter, the divorce attorney Robert had recommended. Let's get started. He's gone too far. Driving home, with the city lights reflecting on the Ashley River, Alla knew this battle wasn't just about money. It was about reclaiming herself, one step at a time, and she was ready. The next morning, Alla woke up in the living room of the historic house, where she had slept on the sofa to avoid sharing a bedroom with Victor. Sunlight filtered through the silk curtains, illuminating the polished hardwood floor, but it couldn't dispel the emptiness in her heart. The confrontation at the Italian restaurant the previous night still lingered. Victor's panicked eyes, Veronica's abrupt departure, and the stack of documents like a ticking time bomb between them. But Alla had no time to wallow in sorrow. She got up, brewed a strong cup of coffee, and began plotting her next steps. Uncle Pavel's inheritance was a light at the end of the tunnel, but to reach it, she had to navigate the wreckage Victor had left behind. Alla met Susan Carter, a divorce attorney, at a small but modern office on Broad Street, just a few blocks from Robert Mitchell's office. Susan, with her salt and pepper bob and razor-sharp gaze, reviewed the documents Alla brought. Victor dug his own grave, Susan said, her fingers tapping lightly on the desk as she read a copy of a fraudulent loan agreement. Mortgaging the house without your signature is fraud. Credit cards in your name. Also fraud. We can take him to court, even push for a criminal investigation. Alla nodded, but she didn't want a prolonged battle. I want it clean, she said, her voice firm. Protect my assets, reclaim what's mine, and end this quickly. Susan smiled, as if recognizing a formidable ally. They devised a strategy. Request a court order to protect the house and Alla's inherited assets, while holding Victor accountable for the full loan and credit card debts. Susan also suggested hiring a private investigator to dig deeper into the finances of Victor's Insurtech company, suspecting he might have manipulated the books to hide losses. He thinks you'll crumble, Susan said, handing Alla a cup of coffee from the office machine. But he doesn't know you're holding the trump card. Parallel to the legal front, Alla began taking charge of Uncle Pavel's legacy. She met Michael Tran, a seasoned property manager in Charleston, at a 3-story office building on Savannah Highway, one of the properties she inherited. Michael, stocky with a warm, steady voice, showed her the building, explaining lease agreements and potential for value growth. Pavel was meticulous, he said, pointing to neatly organized financial reports. He chose prime locations, but they need a manager with vision. Are you ready? Alla nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and apprehension. She had never imagined running a real estate portfolio, but each step was a chance to escape Victor's shadow. Meanwhile, Victor kept up the pressure. His texts came in waves, sometimes sweet. Do you remember our trip to the Outer Banks? We were happy. Other times threatening. Veronica thinks I should demand an audit of your accounting records. Don't make this harder, Alla. She read them but didn't respond, each message a reminder of his selfishness. She saved them all in a folder, knowing they could serve as evidence if needed. Max and Erin became Alla's anchors in this storm. One evening, she invited them over, preparing a simple meal of cornbread and barbecue, their childhood favorite. Max, 24, launching a tech startup, shared his frustration. "Dad thinks I'll side with him," he said, his voice bitter. "He said he deserves to be happy after sacrificing for the family. But Mom, you're the one who sacrificed more." Erin, 20, a sophomore at the College of Charleston, hugged Alla tightly. "I don't want to talk to Dad anymore," she said, her eyes red. "But I'm so proud of how strong you are." Their words fueled Alla's resolve, but she also felt their pain, the ache of a family torn apart. Between meetings with Michael and Susan, Alla began teaching herself property management. She spent evenings poring over Pavel's reports, learning about commercial lease rates and investment strategies. One night, as she sat in the living room, the glow of a table lamp illuminating the documents, she realized she wasn't just protecting assets. She was building a new future. Pavel's legacy wasn't just money. It was an invitation to redefine herself, not as a wife or an accountant, but as a woman in control. But Victor wouldn't let go easily. A late-day text from him sent a chill through her. "We need to talk before this goes too far. Meet me at the cafe on King Street, Saturday, 10 a.m. She stared at the screen, her fingers hovering over the words. This wasn't an invitation to talk. It was a last-ditch effort to control her. Alla replied curtly, "Contact my lawyer." She knew the fight wasn't over, but with each step, she was closer to freedom. As she turned off the light and climbed the stairs, the historic house seemed to whisper its support, as if it too was waiting for her rebirth. Alla pushed open the door to the historic Charleston house, the scent of morning coffee still lingering in the air. She had just returned from a meeting with Michael Tran, the property manager, discussing upgrades to a commercial building in Savannah. Her purse still slung over her shoulder, she froze at the sound of unfamiliar noise from upstairs, footsteps and a familiar, faintly arrogant voice. Her heart pounded, not from fear but from a sharp premonition. She climbed the stairs deliberately, and when she pushed open the master bedroom door, the scene before her made her grip tighten. Victor stood there, holding a wooden watchbox, packing items into a suitcase. Beside him, Veronica Steele lounged on the bed Alla and Victor had shared for 25 years, scrolling through her phone with an air of indifference. Her sequined dress clashed garishly with the simple quilt. "Oh, you're Alla, right?" Veronica said without looking up, her tone as if appraising an item in a store. "Victor's told me so much about you." Alla stood still, her breathing steady, but a storm brewed within. "Veronica, you're in my house," she said, her voice low but sharp as a razor. "And Victor, you have no right to barge in here." Victor turned. His face briefly flustered before slipping back into false confidence. "I'm just grabbing some personal things," he said with a shrug. "Veronica wanted to see the house. She thinks we could sell it for a fresh start." Veronica sat up, tossing her hair, her eyes scanning Alla like a rival. "It's a nice house but a bit dated, don't you think? Victor says he needs a clean break." Alla smiled. Not the warm smile she once reserved for guests, but a cold, calculated one. She pulled another stack of documents from her purse, copies of the fraud evidence Karen Hayes had prepared, thicker than the set she'd given Victor at the Italian restaurant. "Veronica, before you dream of fresh starts, take a look at this," she said, tossing the papers onto the bed beside Veronica's high heels. The young woman frowned, flipping through a few pages. Her face paled as she read the details. A $200,000 loan with Alla's forged signature, $30,000 in credit card debt, and financial reports showing Victor's Incitec company teetering on bankruptcy. "Victor, what's this about?" Veronica asked, her voice trembling, her eyes darting between panic and anger. Victor stepped forward, trying to snatch the documents. "She's exaggerating. It's just temporary, babe. But Veronica was already on her feet, heels clacking on the hardwood. "Temporary? You said you were loaded. You promised New York, a penthouse." Clutching the papers like a shield, she stormed out, leaving Victor red-faced, still gripping the watchbox. Alla crossed her arms, staring at Victor. She didn't know you mortgaged this house, did she? Or that you drained our joint account to buy her lavish gifts? Victor opened his mouth, but no words came. He sank onto the bed, rubbing his temples. Alla, what do you want? To ruin me completely. His voice had lost its arrogance, now tinged with desperation, like a chess player realizing he'd been checkmated. She stepped forward, standing over him, her gaze unwavering. I want what's fair, she said, her voice clear and steady. You'll pay off the fraudulent loan and credit card debt. You'll relinquish all claims to this house and my inheritance. In return, I'll let your company lease a building from my portfolio. The office on Calhoun Street, 5-year contract, discounted rate. She paused, letting her words sink in. That's your last chance, Victor. Take it or leave it. Victor looked up, his eyes a mix of anger and astonishment. You think you can control me like that? He stood, his voice rising. I'm still your husband, Alla. I have rights. She cut him off, stepping closer, her voice like a cold wind. Your rights ended when you forged my signature and tore this family apart. Sign the papers, or I'll hand everything to the police. Your choice. She turned and walked out, not waiting for his response, leaving Victor frozen in the room that once symbolized their shared life. In the kitchen, Alla heard the suitcase drag across the floor and the front door slam. Victor was gone, no goodbye. She sat down, her hands trembling slightly, but not from fear. It was the feeling of someone who'd just scaled a mountain. She texted Susan Carter. Victor saw the evidence. Prepare the temporary order and divorce papers. Then she called Max and Aaron, arranging dinner for the next day. We need to talk about the future, she said over the phone, her voice soft but certain. Outside the window, moonlight glimmered on the Ashley River, sparkling like a promise. Alla opened her laptop, reviewing the property reports from Michael. The Calhoun Street building she'd offered Victor was one of Pavel's most profitable assets. She'd chosen it not out of kindness but calculation, keeping Victor in check at a safe distance. As she closed the laptop, a new feeling rose. Not triumph but clarity. Victor may have tried to destroy her, but she was building an empire of her own, and no one could take that away. A week after the bedroom confrontation, Alla sat in Susan Carter's elegant office on Broad Street, sunlight streaming through large windows onto stacks of documents on the walnut desk. Outside, Charleston bustled with pedestrians and horse-drawn carriages clattering on cobblestone streets. But in this room, the air was heavy with the silence before a storm. Susan, with her gold-rimmed glasses and piercing gaze, slid a stack of papers toward Alla. Victor agreed, she said, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. He signed the divorce settlement this morning. No contesting the house, no claims on your inheritance, and he's committed to paying off the loan and credit card debts in full. Alla flipped through the pages, her fingers pausing on Victor's shaky signature. The agreement was the result of an emergency mediation session Susan had arranged, where Victor, faced with irrefutable evidence of fraud, had no choice but to concede. He wants to avoid a criminal investigation, Susan continued, leaning back in her chair. We won, Alla. But are you sure you don't want to push for more compensation? He deserves to be punished. Alla shook her head, her gaze drifting to the window where ancient oak trees swayed in the breeze. I don't want to drag this out, she said, her voice steady but resolute. I want closure and to move on. Closure, it turned out, wasn't just legal. Alla had begun reshaping her life, using Uncle Pavel's legacy as a foundation. She officially took over the real estate company, naming it Vasily Properties, a nod to her Russian roots and the resilience Pavel always praised. With Michael Tran, she reviewed the portfolio, adding a small retail building in Mount Pleasant, a Charleston suburb with high profit potential. Meetings with contractors and tenants became therapy for her soul, each signed contract a brick in her new future. Alla also devoted time to Pavel's scholarship fund. She doubled the number of scholarships, focusing on female students studying finance and business at the College of Charleston. At a meeting with the fund's board, she stood before a small group, sharing her vision. "We're not just giving money, we're giving women the chance to shape their own destinies." The words, though simple, made her feel she was carrying forward Pavel's legacy, not just in assets but in values. Meanwhile, Max and Aaron were finding ways to cope with the wounds of their father's betrayal. One evening, Alla invited them to a riverside restaurant on the Ashley, where they sat under string lights, sipping wine and eating fried fish, a Southern staple. Max, looking more mature after months of startup struggles, shared that he'd met Victor for coffee. "He apologized," Max said, avoiding his mother's eyes. "But I can't forgive him easily. He hurt you too much." Aaron, usually vibrant, was quieter now. "I just want you to be happy," she whispered, squeezing Alla's hand. Their words warmed her, but also reminded her that her children's healing would take time. Victor, meanwhile, seemed to have accepted defeat. He moved into a small apartment near his company's office on Calhoun Street, where Alla allowed his firm to lease at a discounted rate, a decision born not of kindness, but of a desire to keep him in check. But soon after, Alla received a letter from Victor's sister, pleading for her to forgive and keep the family intact. Then came calls from unknown numbers, sobbing women or threatening men, implying she was ruining Victor. Alla realized these were desperate attempts by Victor's family, likely spurred by him, to pressure her. She didn't respond, saving the messages and calls for Susan as backup evidence. "They think they can bully me," she told Natalie over wine one evening. Natalie laughed, raising her glass. "They don't know who you are, Alla." Leaving Susan's office with a copy of the divorce settlement, Alla felt an odd relief. Not gloating victory, but freedom, like shedding a too tight coat. Driving across the Ravenel Bridge, the river sparkling below, she smiled genuinely for the first time in months. Victor may have tried to destroy her, but he'd unwittingly handed her the key to a new chapter. Vasily Properties, the scholarship fund, and Alla herself, all were beginning to bloom, and no one could stop her. 6 months later, Alla stood in the new office of Vasily Properties, a modern space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Ashley River, sparkling under Charleston's sunlight. White walls were accented with abstract art, the hardwood floor gleamed, and a plaque reading Vasily Properties hung proudly at the entrance. She wore a teal silk dress, no longer the familiar office suit, but a symbol of a woman rewriting her story. On her desk sat a small framed photo of her and Uncle Pavel at a riverside cafe. His smile a reminder of the final gift he'd left her. Not just wealth, but belief in her own strength. Alla gazed out at the sailboats gliding on the water. Vasily Properties was now a respected name in Charleston, its portfolio expanded with 2 new buildings, a strip mall in Somerville and an office in Savannah. She'd learned to negotiate with contractors, secure lease agreements, and was even researching Atlanta's real estate market. Pavel's scholarship fund, now named after him, had awarded 10 more scholarships to female finance students, and Alla's heart warmed with each thank you letter she received. "You changed my future," one girl wrote, and Alla kept the letter in her desk as a reminder of her purpose. Max and Aaron had found their own ways to heal from their father's betrayal. Max, now running a small tech startup, occasionally met Victor for a beer but kept his distance. Aaron, busy with her junior year at college, had regained her radiant smile, often visiting Alla to cook together. "You're my superhero," Aaron said over a homemade gumbo dinner, and Alla smiled, hiding a mix of joy and lingering ache. Victor, meanwhile, lived quietly in his rented apartment near Calhoun Street. His Incitec company limped along, smaller now, sustained by Alla's discounted lease. Through mutual acquaintances, she heard he'd tried online dating, but with little success. Women his age found his story troubling. Younger ones left quickly upon learning his financial state. Alla felt no satisfaction, only a calm detachment. Victor was part of her past, no longer able to shape her future. As twilight settled over Charleston, Alla checked her schedule, a trip to Savannah next week to inspect a new property. She packed her laptop, picked up the photo of Pavel and whispered, "Thank you." At 51, she no longer dreamed of quiet retirement with Victor, but of a wide-open horizon, buildings, dreams, and a new Alla Vasili. She stepped out of the office, the Ashley River breeze brushing her hair, carrying the scent of freedom and unwritten possibilities. Thank you for joining Alla's inspiring journey of rebirth. Please subscribe to follow more stories of rising above. See you in the next video, where we'll continue exploring people who turn adversity into opportunity.